As the 1992-93 NHL season got underway, no player was more mesmerizing, more awe-inspiring, or more unstoppable than Mario LeMieux. Fresh off a third career Art Ross trophy and a second consecutive Stanley Cup title, number 66 had seemingly gotten even better, authoring a torrid start to his season that had him flirting with hockey's most hallowed single-season record. That is, until LeMieux's campaign was tragically derailed, with a devastating diagnosis halting his historic season in its tracks. However, as the hockey world soon learned, cancer was no match for LeMieux, whose triumphant return to the ice after almost 2 months of radiation treatment remains one of the most inspiring comeback stories in sports history. While Mario LeMieux spent the first chunk of his career in the shadow of Wayne Gretzky, by the late 1980s, Super Mario had supplanted the Great One as hockey's preeminent superstar. In 87-88, a 22-year-old LeMieux put up 168 points, becoming the first player since 1980 not named Gretzky to lead the league in points. The following year, LeMieux outdid himself, setting career highs in goals and assists en route to a mind-boggling 199 points, the most prolific scoring season in NHL history from a player not named Gretzky. He was, in a word, magnificent, a transcendent talent who, like Gretzky, was almost too good for the NHL. And although his relentlessly bothersome back limited him to just 85 regular season contests over the next 2 seasons, LeMieux still averaged almost 2 points per game during that time. And critically, he was still able to propel the Penguins to a Stanley Cup title in 1991 after returning from back surgery, tallying an unthinkable 44 points in 23 playoff games en route to a Conn Smythe Award. Then he did it again. In 91-92, despite contending with more injury issues, LeMieux took home his third career Art Ross trophy and a second straight Conn Smythe, powering through a broken hand suffered in the second round of the playoffs to lead the Penguins to back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. Pittsburgh was an unstoppable force. With LeMieux as their linchpin, and young phenoms Mark Recchi and Jaromir Jagr turning into superstars themselves, the Penguins were seemingly solidifying themselves as the NHL's next great dynasty, a worthy successor to Gretzky's Oilers. And then LeMieux discovered another gear.
He brings the puck back to the Rangers in their slap shot. He shoots and scores. Mario LeMieux. The turn comes in, backhander. He shoots and scores. An unbelievable performance by the greatest player in NHL history.
With the injury trouble ostensibly behind him, LeMieux exploded out of the gate in 92-93. He scored at least once and registered multiple points in each of his first dozen contests, propelling Pittsburgh to a torrid start and positioning himself to potentially break Gretzky's single-season points record. 15 games into the season, LeMieux had 43 points. It was like 88-89 all over again, except this time, LeMieux had an even stronger supporting cast. He was downright scary. Nearly 2 months into the season, LeMieux had more 5-point games than 0-point games. By December 1st, he had already racked up 30 goals. And it was later that week, in fact, that LeMieux turned in one of the most incredible single-game performances of his career, tallying 7 points and tying a personal best with 6 assists in a beatdown of the San Jose Sharks. As the halfway point in the Penguins' schedule neared, LeMieux had racked up a staggering 104 points, almost 3 dozen more than the league's second most prolific scorer. Meanwhile, after multiple years marred by injury, LeMieux had missed a grand total of 1 game. If anyone was ever going to break Gretzky's seemingly unbreakable single-season points record, it was going to be this version of LeMieux, who was on pace for 218, 3 more than Gretzky's record. And then, out of nowhere, LeMieux's historic season came to a screeching and devastating halt. In early January, LeMieux noticed that the lump on his neck that he'd been ignoring for the previous year and a half had gotten bigger. A CAT scan revealed it to be a swollen lymph node, a growth that was surgically removed and then biopsied. And on January 12th, after missing 3 straight games with an unrelated recurrence of back pain, LeMieux made the announcement that upended the hockey world. He had been diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, a type of cancer that attacks the lymphatic system.
I was shocked, just to hear the word cancer. It's very scary when you're sitting in the office with 2 doctors and they tell you to sit down what they're about to tell me is, not a good thing. And then they tell me all different kinds of things to help me cope with it. So it was very difficult for a few days to accept that I had cancer, and it was certainly a tough few days in my life.
Although Lemieux's doctors were optimistic about his outlook, giving him a 90 to 95% chance of a full recovery thanks to their early detection, the 27-year-old superstar was prescribed a rigorous course of radiation treatment. 5 sessions a week for a period of at least a month. With that, his pursuit of Gretzky's record all but ended, as Lemieux vowed to return only when he was 100% cured. And although the prognosis theoretically gave him a chance to be back for the start of the playoffs in mid-April, this was still cancer. Cancer doesn't really care about timelines. Plus, even if he did return in time for the postseason, it was impossible to know how he'd fare on the ice after weeks of radiation treatment, which can lead to weight loss and fatigue. Ultimately, the Penguins would just have to wait and see how their embattled captain responded. As it does, however, the show went on in Lemieux's absence. And while the Penguins held their own without their cornerstone, Lemieux's once considerable lead atop the scoring leaderboard eroded as the weeks flew by. By late February, Pat LaFontaine of the Buffalo Sabres had usurped Lemieux as the league's leading scorer. And with multiple others closing in on triple digits, it seemed like Lemieux wouldn't even have another Art Ross trophy to show for his uniquely productive and uniquely harrowing season. But they call him Super Mario for a reason. In less than 8 weeks away from the team, Lemieux had made incredible progress in his recovery. Not only was he responding well to the treatments, but he was well ahead of schedule and was gearing up for a return to the ice. And on the morning of March 2nd, less than 2 months removed from his diagnosis, Lemieux underwent his 22nd and final radiation treatment. Afterward, Lemieux headed straight to the Pittsburgh airport. The Penguins were playing in Philadelphia that night. He had a plane to catch. As it happens, his flight to Philly was delayed for hours on account of bad weather, but after enduring 2 months of radiation treatment, he wasn't about to let that stop him from getting back on the ice. Instead, Lemieux made a call and chartered a private plane that had him in Philadelphia with just a few hours to go before puck drop. His arrival at the Spectrum half a day after undergoing radiation treatment in Pittsburgh came as a surprise to just about everybody, his teammates included, but that only made his return all the more incredible. And what transpired that night was nothing short of magical. When number 66 took the ice, he was treated to a standing ovation in Philadelphia.
And there is the hand for Mario LeMieux, 66 of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who comes into this game trailing the league's leading point getter, Pat LaFontaine, by 12.
They've got a big thing on the screen here. They got a big TV screen here, and it said, "Welcome back," and had Mario's picture, and now he acknowledges the fans.
Despite the age-old rivalry between Philly and Pittsburgh and the notorious hostility of Philadelphia's fans, those at the Spectrum couldn't help but acknowledge the tremendous strength, resilience, and determination of Lemieux. And it wasn't long before Lemieux, who hadn't so much as practiced, let alone played in a game in nearly 2 months, picked up right where he left off.
Back to Lemieux. Lemieux comes in, shoots and scores! Mario LeMieux trails it in, his 40th of the year.
Not even 2 minutes after that triumphant goal, Lemieux added an assist for his second point of the game. It was as inspiring a performance as you'll ever see, one that helped shape Lemieux's transcendent legacy and immediately re-established the Penguins as the NHL's team to beat. And if any doubt remained as to whether an in-remission Lemieux could catch LaFontaine and capture a 4th Art Ross trophy, he swiftly put that skepticism to bed. In his second home game following his return, Lemieux put up 4 points in a win over the Kings. A week later, he scored 4 goals and added 2 assists in a thrashing of Washington. He followed that performance up with a second straight 4-goal game, collecting 5 points in a shellacking of the Flyers. And with the playoffs nearing, Lemieux managed a 5-goal game at Madison Square Garden, earning him yet another ovation from a road crowd.
They're giving Mario LeMieux a standing ovation here in New York.
As Lemieux later told Sports Illustrated, "I was determined to come back and regain the lead. I thought about it even during radiation." From March 9th through April 10th, Lemieux notched a whopping 51 points in 17 games to leave LaFontaine in his dust. During that stretch, by the way, the Penguins went a perfect 17-0, giving them the longest winning streak in NHL history. And although that streak came to an end with a tie against New Jersey on the season's final day, Lemieux finished his remarkable campaign on a high note. with a 2-goal, 3-point effort that gave him 160 for the season. 160 points in 60 games, 56 of those points coming after 22 rounds of radiation treatment. In spite of everything, LeMieux finished with a dozen more points than the league's second most prolific scorer. Meanwhile, his 2.67 points per game average was good for the third highest single-season mark in NHL history, behind only a pair of Gretzky seasons. LeMieux's superhuman efforts not only earned him the Art Ross Trophy, but he was also named the league's most valuable player and its most outstanding player as voted on by the players. He also received the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy for his perseverance and sportsmanship. And although the first-place Penguins weren't able to complete their Stanley Cup three-peat, Lemieux certainly did his part. In 11 playoff games, Lemieux tallied a team-high 18 points. And despite coming up short of the ultimate prize, that 92-93 season has just as special a place in the annals of Penguins history as their two previous championship seasons. Lemieux's tenacity in the face of cancer and his continued brilliance in the wake of it remains as memorable and as uplifting as any other chapter in franchise history. That season elevated Lemieux from an NHL superstar into something even greater, a symbol of resilience that transcended hockey. And as much as his incredible legacy is tied to his innumerable accomplishments on the ice, Lemieux is just as strongly defined by the strength and perseverance that he showed off of it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button.